It was a crisp morning in London. The ceremonial grounds outside Buckingham Palace were bathed in golden sunlight as dignitaries and spectators gathered for the annual honors parade. Flags fluttered, brass bands tuned their instruments, and rows of royal guards stood in perfect formation. Stoic, majestic, and proud. Amid the crowd, a silent figure sat quietly in the corner of the VIP section. Dressed in full regalia but without the flamboyance of medals, he didn't draw attention. There was something humble yet commanding about his presence. Few noticed him. Fewer still recognized him. He sat with his cap resting gently on his knee, eyes calm, as if watching memories unfold rather than a performance. The camera lingers on his aged hands, calloused, steady, marked by years of unseen service. Children in the front rows laughed and pointed at the horses, but the guard remained motionless, almost invisible in his silence. He wasn't there for praise. He had seen more than most men ever would. And today, he was there by special invitation from the crown, not to be seen but to be remembered. Little did the crowd know, within minutes, the atmosphere would shift dramatically, and this man would become the center of everything. The rhythm of the ceremony was suddenly broken by the sound of car doors opening just beyond the inner gate. A luxury military vehicle rolled in, and stepping out was a foreign officer dressed in ornate uniform, a highly decorated general from an allied nation. His arrival was unexpected, but protocol dictated he be treated with utmost respect. The staff scrambled. A young officer in training, tasked with guest management, panicked. He scanned the VIP section and noticed what he thought was a retired, unimportant guard sitting alone. Without verifying anything, he marched up, bent slightly, and whispered with forced politeness, "Excuse me, sir. We need this seat for an honored guest." The old guard looked up briefly, eyes steady and unreadable. Then, without argument, he rose silently, nodded once, and stepped aside. The foreign general was ushered into his seat as photographers quickly took snapshots. To most, it seemed a minor adjustment, an old man moving for someone seemingly more important. But in the shadows behind the grandstand, a few seasoned officers exchanged looks. They knew exactly who had just been removed, and they knew what that silence meant. A storm was quietly brewing beneath the pageantry, and it would strike faster than anyone expected as the old royal guard stepped back from his reserved seat. No one made eye contact with him. He wasn't escorted, thanked, or acknowledged. He simply blended back into the background, the very way soldiers do when duty calls for sacrifice. The young staff member gestured toward an empty bench far from the front, suggesting he make himself comfortable there. Still, the old man said nothing. He stood straight, adjusted his cap, and walked to the side of the courtyard, positioning himself beside a pillar. From here, he watched the foreign general take his seat, shake hands with military brass, and nod arrogantly as cameras clicked. The crowd cheered for the parade continuing before them, blissfully unaware of the quiet insult that had just taken place. Behind the scenes, a few officers stiffened. One leaned over to whisper, "Did they just move him?" The other gave a grim nod. They did, and they're about to regret it. The man removed from his seat wasn't just a royal guard. He was an institution. His silence wasn't weakness. It was restraint. And somewhere in the palace, a high-ranking general was about to walk into a situation that would shake the entire staff to its core. Exactly 5 minutes after the foreign general sat down, a black official car arrived with little fanfare. Out stepped General Harrington, the British Army's highest-ranking official and a man known for his icy temper when protocol was breached. His boots struck the stone with purpose as he made his way directly to the VIP section. His eyes scanned the seats, but something wasn't right. His expression changed. "Where is Sir Alistair Kane?" he barked. The junior staff, confused, mumbled, "Who, sir?" Harrington's face darkened. "The man who was supposed to be seated right there," he growled, pointing at the chair now occupied by the foreign general. One of the aides stammered, "He was moved, sir. We needed the seat for—" "You moved him?" Harrington snapped. His voice now drew attention from all corners. "You removed Sir Alistair Kane? Are you out of your mind?" Whispers spread like wildfire. Someone muttered, The Victoria Cross recipient? Another added, SAS commander in the Sandstorm operation? Realization dawned too late. Harrington turned on the staff. Unacceptable. Unforgivable. You just insulted a national legend. The atmosphere turned electric. Silence fell. The show was still going on, but every backstage I was now on the unfolding reckoning. Panic swept through the event staff. One of the junior officers whispered, "Wait, that was Sir Alistair Kane?" A senior aide nodded grimly. Yes, VC Holder. Led the Sandstorm raid. Saved 48 men behind enemy lines. The Queen gave him that seat herself. Faces turned pale. Sir Alistair Kane wasn't just any retired guard. He was the epitome of silent valor. A man who had walked into war zones while others fled, who had once refused evacuation until every injured soldier had been pulled to safety. The Victoria Cross pinned on his chest wasn't for decoration. It was earned through blood, grit, and unwavering courage. And today that man had been treated like an extra, moved like a nobody. The foreign general, now overhearing parts of the conversation, shifted uncomfortably. General Harrington's voice boomed, "You've embarrassed this institution. You've insulted the Crown's guest of honor. Do you even understand what he's done for this country?" No one could answer. The silence was damning. Every word weighed like a verdict. And suddenly, the ceremonial event, so carefully choreographed, felt like it was on the verge of unraveling completely. General Harrington didn't wait for explanations. He turned toward the junior staff responsible for seating and said coldly, "You're all dismissed. Effective immediately." The words hit like thunder. A staffer tried to protest, but the general cut him off. "You had one job. Honor the guests who have earned their place here. You failed. You're done." Gasps rippled through the immediate crowd. Phones went down. Eyes locked in disbelief. Even the foreign officer, realizing the magnitude of what had happened, stood up awkwardly, stepping away from the chair as if it were cursed. One by one, the event coordinators, assistants, and logistics team members were ordered to leave the ceremonial zone. Their earpieces were confiscated, their clipboards dropped. Harrington wasn't being theatrical, he was being just. The message was clear. No rank or uniform excuses disrespect, especially not toward a man whose silence spoke louder than medals. Behind the stands, a few veterans clapped softly, understanding what this act meant. Justice had arrived, not with fanfare, but with sharp surgical honor. In just 5 minutes, everything had changed, and the man they'd dismissed was about to be restored not just to his seat, but to the reverence he deserved. A military aide rushed out to find Sir Alistair Kane, who was still standing calmly near the marble pillar, watching the parade. "Sir, please, the general requests your return." Without bitterness, without ego, he nodded gently and walked with quiet grace toward the VIP section. General Harrington personally held out a hand to him, saluted, and whispered something only they could hear. Alistair smiled faintly and took his seat. This time, the band stopped. Harrington turned to the crowd, lifted the microphone, and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, I ask for a moment of your respect, not for ceremony, but for sacrifice. Sir Alistair Kane, VC, SAS Commander, Hero of the Crown." The audience, stunned, stood to their feet. Applause erupted, not the kind you give a performer, but the kind that comes from the soul. Even the foreign general bowed slightly in shame. The moment wasn't staged. It was real. A band played "Abide With Me," as veterans in the crowd stood silently, some with tears. Alistair sat quietly, eyes fixed on the horizon, unmoved by the praise. He didn't come for applause. He came because he was asked. But now, the nation remembered WHY.S. The parade wound down and the crowd began to disperse. The camera held one final shot. Sir Alistair Kane, alone now, sitting quietly as the sun dipped behind the London skyline. His cap rested again on his knee. Around him, silence. No fanfare, no cameras, just peace. In the background, General Harrington's voice returned in voiceover. "We live in times where medals shine brighter than actions. But there are men Men who carry their honor not on their chest, but in their silence. Men like Sir Alistair Cain, forgotten by many, remembered by the worthy. The screen slowly faded to black. Then white letters appeared. Honor is not something you demand. It's something you leave behind. Fade out. The music, soft and reverent, carried a final note of solemnity, as if the nation itself bowed its head one last time.